Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Forhermusings podcast where we make unique stories exist. I am your host, Funmi Olagunju, and today is the sixth and final, I think final episode. And I'm so excited to welcome a special guest. She is a writer, first and foremost. She's also the editor-in-chief of JOCP, also known as Journal of Creative Pursuit. She's also a fashion designer, I believe. What else? What else do I know about her? And fun fact, she's a philophile. I don't know. I saw that on your bio somewhere. I don't know what that means. But I'm so excited to welcome my guest, Tia Ferhana.
Well, hi. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm so excited. I'm so glad we could do this because I haven't spoken to you properly in maybe 2 years.
Yeah, I think the last time we spoke was that our collaboration that we had for GOCP first ever issue.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had a really great time doing that with you for our
Yeah.
very first issue.
Me too, me too. I had a good time as well because I think we got a chance to collaborate and like produce something. And I think that was my first time producing something professionally, or maybe my second time. And it was just nice because it was right in the middle of the pandemic, I think, like 2020.
Yeah, it was
And
2020.
yeah. And it was just nice to do something creative, and it was a challenge for me. I don't know about you, but for me, because it was it was remote. So you're based in Indonesia, and I'm in the UK. So we had to have this constant communication, and sharing of ideas and time management, all that good stuff. But I think it turned out beautifully. And I'm super excited to like share like the results of it, hopefully in this podcast as well. So I think the first thing I want to get into is how we met. Do you remember?
Yeah, so we actually met in a short course at City University. I forgot what year it was. I think it was 2019. It was right
I
before
think
the
so.
pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were
Mm.
in the class. We were like getting into the business of freelance writing, not knowing where to start, how to start. And I remember uh, I was at uni at the time, and then I went to that short course, and I was just wanting to try something new. Freelance writing is always something that I'm interested to do, but I didn't know how to channel it, especially, I was based in Indonesia at the time before I was at uni, and I don't know how to kind of um, like pitch my ideas to publication, especially in the UK. So that's why I went to that class, and we met at that class and we learned a lot about each other. And I think that's also why when I first created the first issue of GOCP, I thought of you because I thought there was a
Uh,
lot that we can explore. I mean, I know you're modeling, and then I know that
yeah.
you have a lot of passion in the fashion industry and the creative industry in general, and I wanted to dig that deeper with you. And I think we did that beautifully in that collaboration. I mean, it was a challenge for me as well. It was my first time creating anything, producing anything, and we had to do it remotely, within a very, strict budget. And, in the middle of pandemic, it was difficult. But I think I'm quite proud with how it turned out. Obviously, we had a really uh, amazing help from your friend,
Yeah,
Kiana.
Kieran, yeah. That was my first time working with him. And I think I found him through like a contact of mine who referred me to him and said, "Oh, he's a great photographer, all-rounder." So I thought, oh yeah, he's great to work with. And I think we've worked together since after that. But it was just nice to like bring people together. I think that was really fun. What was really fun about the project. And of course, sharing like the creativity, like what my experience as a model, and obviously your contribution as a writer and producer as well. So it was really good. I'm really happy about that. Also, I want to talk about uh, a bit about your background because you also have a clothing brand called By Ferhana. And can you tell me a bit more about that? Because I think what I like about overall what you're doing is this is idea of like this is theme of celebration, whether it's with JOCP and, you know, celebrating the global majority. I like that the way it's phrased. And then, of course, with your brand as well, celebrating Indonesian culture and heritage. So can you tell me a bit more about your background and also why you think it's important to celebrate creative people and specifically your culture?
So I was born and raised in Indonesia. And then when I was 16, I moved to the UK to do my A levels. And I stayed there for about 6 to 7 years to do my bachelor up until my master's. And what I found was that when I went back home, I realized that it was quite a privilege, the experience that I had, being able to understand the culture that I have, but also understanding like how things work. Well, in UK specifically, anyway, when it comes to the creative industries. And so I wanted to be able to kind of celebrate my own culture, but also not only celebrating it within the context of Indonesia, but letting foreigners know, people in the West know what our culture is about, but giving that voice and that control directly to the people who have the culture, who are, living and breathing the culture, and not, I'm with GOCP and with the clothing line, I'm just acting as a mediator. I'm just acting as a medium in a way that these people can um, celebrate their work, can put their work out there. There's not a lot of my voice that kind of like being put within that production process of either the clothing or the publication that I'm doing. So that was the reason why I wanted to do it, is because especially so after I graduated, I worked as a journalist at CNN Indonesia, and there I had a chance to meet a lot of creative people, both like indigenous people and the modern creative people living in Jakarta, and a lot of them expresses how, especially the indigenous, like they have a lot of foreigners come into their village and learn about our culture and ways of making our crafts, but then they only just take the knowledge and then they bring it back to their country and producing it there with the knowledge they have. And so, they're expressing their concerns, how they're happy that people are curious enough to learn about their culture, but also in the long run, it destroys their opportunity to gain financial benefit from their crafts. And so, and in a way that they're losing control over the narratives of their own crafts. Because what you need to understand with cultural things, there are a lot of stories behind it. So when you don't really know the culture inside out, there are a lot of possibilities that this narrative, this story is kind of lost in between the production process. And so I wanted to kind of give them the opportunity to be able to tell their own stories through their crafts and not intervene in any way, but being able to, in a way, like bridging their stories, their culture into somewhere that might be out of reach for them.
Mm.
So that's what I'm trying to do anyway. But yeah.
I really love that, because I think ownership is something I'm getting from what you said, the idea of like, as you do more creative things and you want to like find your voice, it's really important to have some way of holding on to what you're creating and being authentic and telling your story authentically. Because as you said as well, like, oftentimes the stories from certain cultures are misrepresented. I think of certain films, I think of even books as well, and how authors have, especially from the West, have taken these cultures and seen it as this sort of exotic thing and told it in a way that's not really true. So I think that's so interesting. And I want to know as well, because working in the publishing industry is not something that's easy. And obviously going from being a journalist at CNN Indonesia to, I guess, owning your own business, what has that been like? And of course, during the pandemic, um, the pressures and the challenges of, I guess, maintaining that kind of consistency, because you have to produce things for people to read the physical magazine. So what was that like?
So I think the biggest challenge for me was the financial aspect of it. So with independent magazines, especially when you just starting, like you don't have a lot of funding that you get from selling the magazines. So a lot of it I have to self-fund it. And when you're working in Indonesia, our currency is quite low compared to the UK. And so being able to collect the same amount of money to produce that is very difficult in the beginning. And also, I think it was a lot easier when I was living in the UK, when I was studying in the UK, to create the content because I was able to reach out to a lot of different people. But now being in Indonesia and trying to reach out from people who's halfway, on the other side of the world is not so easy, especially with the time difference. And then sometimes there's just a lot of aspects that just doesn't work when I'm here. So yeah, the challenges are mainly the financial aspects of it, but also in terms of the creativity wise, the ways that we can produce the magazine. If I was there in the UK, I might have a lot more flexibility to work with different people, but because I'm here, that kind of become a lot more restricted.
I totally get that. I totally get that. I think the pandemic really hit people, especially creative people, in the biggest way. I think trying to find that consistency again, trying to like get your feet back on solid ground, has been the hardest thing for creative people to kind of get their heads around because the industry um can be a bit unstable. And as you said, you have to self-fund and produce a lot of things if you want to tell your stories. If you don't want to tell your stories, that's fine. But if you want to tell it and you're trying to reach out to people, and maybe some people are too busy, they want to help you, but they're too busy, or just whatever barriers are there, you have to just do things yourself. You have to do it yourself. As Nike said, do it yourself. Just do it. Just
Yeah.
do it. um, so we've come to the part of the segment where we talk about the film that we discussed that you bring to one of your favorite films, but it's a bit of a twist because it's not actually a film, it's a TV show.
Yeah.
So can you tell us what the name of that show is?
So when you told me about New Beginnings, when I think about New Beginnings, I think about a series called Behind Her Eyes on Netflix. I'm sure a lot of people have watched it, or if they haven't, they should because it's really good. Um, and when I think about new beginnings, I reflect back to my own experiences in which new beginnings for me come in forms of a change of place, an environment, and to certain extents, like a change in our identity and adapting to that new environment. So, I mean, not completely, but sometimes there are part of us that needs adapting, right? And
Yeah.
this really resonates with me, although obviously in a less dark and twisted way. When I was 16, I moved to the UK, like I said before. And so, in a way, I had a new beginning. I was placed in a completely different environment and society than what I was used to. Back home, the society are a lot more conservative. And so I wasn't allowed to do, a lot of things. And then when I'm in the UK, I have a lot more freedom. And so I had a chance to present a different part of myself. And I think when you're that age, especially, you have like a certain curiosity to explore different things that lead you to form some kind of like identity for yourself that might be different than what you were before.
Yeah.
And so I think, with this series, when Robert, one of the character, moved to different bodies to have new beginnings with the husband, David, I think his name was,
Yeah.
he, right? Yeah, he gave
Yeah, David.
himself the chances to do it right this time. But I think like with the new beginnings, I think it's also important to realize that we have to self-reflect and be willing to kind of like let go of certain things, let go of certain way of doing things. Otherwise, like it doesn't matter how many new beginnings or new chances that we have, we always ended up with the same result. And I think, that's kind of like what I've been experiencing in the different environment that I was in from the age of 16 to now I'm 27.
Also, just a big like, because Behind Her Eyes is a great show. I just wanted to celebrate that. And also just because I thought coming on to this doing this podcast, it would be like just films because I love films. But when you mentioned Behind Her Eyes, I thought about it properly and I thought it's a 6-part limited series, but it's more or less, if you put it together, it's like a really long film.
Yeah.
A really long film. I mean, let's talk about it a little bit more because it's a psychological thriller. We've got 3 main protagonists: David, Adele, and Louise. And this is like what I got from it, it's like it's a cautionary tale of like minding your own business.
Yeah.
Because Louise, she bumps into David at a bar or a club, and then they kind of foster this. They have a spark, basically. They have this connection. But then I guess nothing comes of it because of the way the night turns out. And then they reconnect because David is the new psychologist or therapist at his clinic or something. And that's how he bumps into Louise. And then I guess they continue their connection, even though it's awkward at first. And it's quite a slow, to be honest, I think the first 2 episodes or 3 episodes is very like drawn out and you're kind of like building the tension and you're not really sure what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But then, as you mentioned about new beginnings and kind of placing yourself, whether it's in the UK for 6 to 7 years while you're studying, or in the case of David starting a new job, Louise having a new boss or new romantic interest, and Adele, I don't really know what's Adele. Sorry, Adele or whoever is inside Adele. Spoilers, by the way, guys. I'm not really sure what Adele's character is trying to accomplish, because I love what you said about like it doesn't matter how many times you have a new beginning. If you don't self-reflect, you're just going back to the same place, basically. And in a
Yeah.
way, what I got from it was the fact that you're almost running away from something, like a part of yourself. Because when I think of like traveling as well, because I love traveling, and I always feel like I'm running away from my problems, and I can leave my problems at home and then go somewhere nice and sunny, but I have to come back home and face those problems. But I guess the difference between Adele or Rob is, when you're on holiday, you probably do get the time to reflect. So you prepare yourself, you enjoy your holiday, and you go, actually, when I get home, I'm going to do this and this and this. Whereas Rob or Adele, it's not really clear what they're running from. Is it the drug addiction or the fact that they're lonely? What do you think the character is running from, Rob specifically,
And
Adele?
I think, first of all, when you said about minding your business, that's what like really annoys me about this series. Like, if Louise would have just mind her own business, like none of this would have happened. But then again, we wouldn't have the series if you would just mind her own business, right? But I
Yeah.
think when, yeah, I'm not really sure what it is that she or he was running from. Um, but I think what I get from it, it's more about like David trying to run from Adele or Robert in a way. But I think like he got stuck in a cycle where, despite not knowing, um, Robert or Adele is always with him. And like I said, like doesn't matter if how many new beginnings that you have, like if that the core problem you don't fix that core problem, like you're just going to end up with the same result. Doesn't matter if Robert transported to like 5 different bodies, if that, that certain personalities of his that he needs to change, it's just they will he will keep ended up with the same result. He will, I think the movie, if we keep watching it for longer, if the movie exists longer, then we're gonna see like David's gonna ended up hating Louis again, because at the end of the day, it's not Louis that he's with, it's Robert,
Mm,
right? It's always
mm,
stuck with that aspect of his life he's unable to kind of escape from.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a great insight that you gave. And because the theme about it is there's sort of like a spiritual aspect to it as well. This idea of
Yeah.
like astral projection. So you're able to basically whilst you're dreaming, you can basically your soul comes out of your body and you're able to basically be in the present time, and like your spirit will walk around and notice the surroundings. And I just thought that was very disturbing.
Yeah.
And because I think the soul is such an important, it's such a undiscovered um territory in terms of our existence as humans. I think there's so much research into the soul and the spirit, and I still think we don't know too much about it. And so I think it's really scary that, or even the possibility of being able to do that. And of course, that would be a whole new beginning for humankind, being able to
Yeah.
transport your soul out of your body. That would be, I don't know, that's giving me like X-Men, um, Marvel vibes. And I don't know if you'd be prepared for that, because even in the X-Men, like the new beginning is as mutants is to, number one, reckon with their abilities, right? Because they usually have this um introduction or like a scene where like they discover their powers and they're like, oh, I don't I don't know how I feel about this. And then there's also the Academy of Mutants where they kind of find community, and then they have to deal with the outside world and their perspectives. So I guess my question would be for you, um, firstly, like, what's your favorite part of this whole show? And what did you find scary about it?
I think the whole idea of transporting to other people's body is really scary. I wouldn't want to try it in the first place. And what I really like about it, I actually can't name like a specific part of it because I'm watching it so many times, like the whole episode kind of merged into one. But like the I think it's towards the end when we finally realize like who was it that is in Adele's body that makes
Mm,
everything make sense. Because like
yeah,
in the beginning I was questioning like at what point did she change? Like why is all of a sudden like she becomes this person that David hates, that David is
yeah,
scared of? And then when you realize that, oh, you know, actually this is not Adele anymore. This is Robert that was inside of her and inside of her body. And, you know, everything just sort of makes sense. And
mm,
I kind of like go back to the previous episode and realize, oh, this is what everything is all about. I mean, yeah, that part of it I thought is really cool. And realizing like, you know, the different colors of, you know, when they got out of their body and moved to another people's body and just like walking around in their soul when doing the astral projections, you can finally realize like the colors of that, I don't know, your soul moving around
yes,
has a significance. I didn't realize it until that part. And I was like, "Oh, that's a really cool way of doing it."
yeah. I didn't notice that as well. Like even on the poster, like I think Louise's astral colors is like green, and it's like on her
Yeah.
face, and then I think Rob's or Adele's is blue, and so it just kind of made sense. And even certain scenes where Louise is at home with her son, and then I think this was at the point where things got heightened between her and David, and they were having their affair. And I think David went over to her place, and there was something hovering on the I don't know if you saw it, like on
Yeah.
the,
Like,
on the screen in the home. And I think it was like a bluish color. And I just thought
yeah.
it was my screen, but it turns out that's
Yeah.
probably Rob or Adele. No, I love that. I love that show. I love it so much. And I'm so glad you brought it on, because as I'm revisiting it, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. The fact that someone thought about this. And it's based on a book as well.
Yeah.
But wow, what a scary world it would be if people could actually do this. Um, I want to get more into like our collaboration as well, because I think it was really special, and I'm so glad that we were able to connect through that. Aside from the writing course or whatever. Um, I think for me, like what I got out of it was it just gave me a different sense of what my place was as a creative person, especially as a model in the fashion industry. It allowed me to, yeah, find my voice, because I think it was such a big, when I think about it, it's definitely worth celebrating, which is what, what's your JOCP is based on as well. I think, yeah, it's worth celebrating, and because it's such a unique perspective, right? From a model, because you don't really get, aside from like films and like documentaries about the fashion industry, you don't really get models talking about what it's like to be a model, unless it's on like in a magazine or something, but which this was also in a magazine too. But you don't really get that perspective. So it was really nice. It felt really good for me, and kind of gave me this kind of well-rounded picture of what I'm actually doing. And it kind of encouraged me to just refocus on my purpose, on why I'm in the industry, um, what I'm trying to get out of it, and like how I see and how I can make an impact with people. So what did you get out of it, this collaboration?
I think for me, it's just really interesting hearing about your experience because, I mean, yes, with the label that I have, but I'm not really like that much merged into the fashion industry. And so I don't really know much about it. All I know is just like talking to this different indigenous people who's making these different crafts and then creating it and then just selling it. But I didn't know like a lot about what's going on, on your side of it. So hearing your experience is really, really interesting. And I think the reason why I wanted to create that in the first place is I want a space for you to kind of like self-reflect as well. Because sometimes when you're doing your job, you're just doing it. You don't really realize like you're doing what you're doing, and like problems that you face along the way. You don't really think much of it. You're just like you're doing it and you tackle the problem as you go along. But then when you actually sit down and I ask you those questions, it gives you the space to kind of like just reflect on everything that you have done, your experience, and what you want to do moving forward. And I think that's also interesting to hear your thought process and like what's next for you and what is it that you learn from and what do you regret, and all those aspects of your experiences.
I'm so glad to hear that. And I'm so glad you kind of you were thinking of me, and you brought this opportunity to me, because yeah, I think it allowed people who, are following my journey to definitely get more insight into what it's like to be in the industry, but also kind of what I'm trying to get out of it, and like why I'm there basically. And so this self-reflection, this idea of this new beginning, because that was a new beginning for me, I would say. And I guess for you as well, because you learned something about the fashion industry and what it's like to be a model. So um yeah, I'm so glad we were able to do that. And before we finish off soon, just give me one sec. Let me quickly grab something. Guess what I've got?
What is it? Show me. Oh, you got the first issue. Did I send you one or did you?
Sorry, what'd
I
you say?
can't actually remember.
Identity. This is the first issue, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it is
Yeah.
my very first issue.
Woo. I mean, the way you look kind of surprised. So I was like, I don't know, it's like a very vintage, is it like an old issue of the magazine? So I was kind of
No, it's just
like,
weird seeing like what you created. I tend to just like after I made it, I print it and I just don't want to look at it anymore. Cause like once I
really?
look at it, I'm just gonna pick it apart. I'm like, I should have done it different. I should have done it, better. I just stopped looking at it once I published it.
It's
It's
fine. It's
really
fine.
nice to see you have it.
Yeah, of course. I think I did I get two copies? I don't even know. I don't know. But of course it has, the issue is called Identity. This was your first issue, numero uno, number one, as it says
Yeah.
here. And you've got a lot of interesting stories, editorials, people you've interviewed. You can sort of see it. It's very interesting. And of course,
Yes.
ah, ah, wow, negotiating change. Wow, that title. Love it, love it. And it's just amazing. It's
It's very
amazing.
personal as well, wasn't it?
Yes, very personal, very personal. Again, self-reflective, new beginning. Um, and it's just got like questions, part of the interview. I don't know if you can see, if people can see it properly, but and I'm pretty sure it's still available to purchase. Yeah. So
Yeah,
everyone,
you can
please go
purchase
and
it from
purchase
our
it.
website, I think.
There you go. She said it. She said it. Anything you're working on? Any more designs by Ferhana? How's that going?
So with
OCP.
um yeah, we're kind of like putting things a little bit on pause with Ferhana, but what we're doing right now is we are working on our fourth volume for
Okay.
GOCP, and it's actually, well, next year we're also publishing our sister publication called The Picnic Baskets. So this fourth volume will be a collaboration between the Picnic Baskets and GOCP. And the theme that we want to delve deeper into is relationship. And with the Picnic Baskets, it's more about the food and culinary traditions of Southeast Asia. And so we want to combine, we want to explore relationships from the angle of um, our food and culinary traditions, our cultures, but also like our relationship with our loved ones and how complex it is, how difficult it is, but also how rewarding it can be. So we're really combining the two aspects of our cultures, our food, our traditions, and also like the creative work, arts, and film and music, on that sort of stuff.
I love that. And I'm so happy for you. And I'm so happy to hear that you are expanding the creative work. And in a way, you're basically sharing the creative process with people. And even like with your Instagram as well, it just feels very immersive, very almost interactive, colorful little snippets. So people can really get an idea and a sense of what you're about and what you're trying to represent with your Indonesian culture and also your work as a creative person. So Tia, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. I feel like there's so much more we could talk about, but there's just not enough time because we are adulting, we are adults, and life is doing a lot. So uh, I'm sure you have somewhere to be.
Well, thank you so
But
much for having me. I really, really, it was really fun talking to you. It has been a while. It's really fun catching up. We actually haven't had like this proper conversation in a while. So it was really nice.
yes, absolutely. It's I think we're just so busy and everyone's got things that they're trying to something's chasing you're either chasing something or something's chasing you.
Yeah.
Um, so where can people find you? Leave your social media, your website, etc.
So mainly the website that I'm currently have is just journalofcreativepursuit.com. Is where you can see a lot about, GOCP and the picnic baskets. And I think I'm quite active on my Instagram. It's at Tia Ferhana. Sometimes I share a lot of my freelance writing in there as well, and my work with GOCP, and just a lot of like behind the scenes of it.
That's great. That's great. I'm sure people will follow you and interact and just buy the magazine and also, talking of the previous issue, I think it was called Humor.
Yeah,
That was the previous
that's our
issue.
last.
So that's the last issue. So yeah, I look forward to reading that because clearly I'm a humorous person. So thank you so much, Tia. Thank you to everyone for listening. And yeah, this was the episode. Making unique stories exist for her musings. Thank you guys. Bye. Wait, hold on. Wait.